You are welcome to Employment Law class. Today we look at section 3 of Unit 4, Elements of Contract, specifically Capacity of Contract. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain what is meant by capacity to contract. State the individuals who do not have the capacity to enter into a contract. Capacity basically has to do with the legal competence of a person to enter into a valid contract. So here, your ability to enter into a legal contract and your competence to perform the duty under the contract is what we refer as capacity. You want to further go ahead to decide whether a person has a capacity or not. You have to look at issue of infant, minor, government, enemy alien, among others, to decide whether they have capacity to enter into a contract or not. Let's start with minor. A minor is a person who has not attained the age of 18. And this is supported by Article 28, Clause 5 of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. Also, Section 1 of the Children's Act 1998 Act 560 also indicate that or define a child to be someone below the age of 18. Now, the Constitution also permits someone who is 18 and above to exercise voting rights. So it means that the Constitution also stipulates that if you are 18 years and above, you can vote. It means that if you are below, you cannot vote. Now, when you move to the Interpretation Act, Section 32, it states that an infant is someone below the age of 21. Now, the Companies Act 2019 Act 992 allows a person who is 18 years and above to incorporate a company. Surprisingly, there is no law in Ghana that stipulates the age for a person to enter into a contract, that the age of majority to enter into a contract. Now, people have argued that look at our Constitution, look at the Companies Act, look at the Children's Act. They are all stating that if you are an infant, then you are below the age of 18. It presupposes that if you are 18 and above, you have the right to enter into a contract. But if you look at Interpretation Act, it also states that you are an infant if you are below the age of 21. So there's kind of conflict there. Now, the common law age for majority to enter into a contract is 21. Under the common law, if you are below the age of 21, you cannot enter into a binding contract. Now, these different schools of thought have indicated, for those who are saying or going for the 21, they are saying that look, if in Ghana there is no specific law as to the age for entry into a contract, the common law is applicable, that's 21. But those who go for make the argument on the basis of the Children's Act, the Constitution, the Companies Act, they also review that if you are 18, you are only an infant and you cannot enter into a contract if you are below the age of 18. Now, let's move on. There are certain times that infants may enter into a contract that will bind them. Sometimes they may enter into a contract in which they have the right to end the contract or terminate the contract after they have attained the age of majority. Now, you should understand that generally, if an infant enters into a contract with an adult, it binds the adult alone, subject to certain exceptions. Now, what are these exceptions? So it means that an infant lacks capacity to enter into a contract, but however, certain contracts, the infant has capacity to enter into those contracts. When it comes to contracts for necessaries, contracts that are beneficial to the infant and beneficial contract of service. Those contracts are binding on the infant. Now, when you talk about contract for necessaries, we are talking about the contract, the goods that meet the living standard of the infant at the time the infant was entering into the contract, and at the time the infant is receiving the contract. You go into detail first, so let me leave it here. Now, contracts that are beneficial to the infant. Here you're looking at the contract that will benefit the infant. So when an infant enters into a contract that will benefit him, that contract will bind the infant. You also have a contract of service. A contract of service normally deals with a contract of employment, education, apprenticeship. So if an infant enters into a contract with an adult for him to be taught or for him to be trained, that contract, if viewed as a whole, is to the benefit of the infant, then that contract is beneficial contract or service, and hence it will bind the infant. Now let's cite the case of D. Francisco v. Banu. In this case, the infant was engaged as a dancer or to be trained as a dancer. And in that case, the terms and conditions, some of the terms and conditions were that the infant cannot marry for the next 7 years. The infant cannot engage in other engagements with other companies, and among others. So when the court construed the contract as a whole, the court came to the conclusion that the terms of the contract were too onerous or too harsh, and therefore such contract is not as a whole to the benefit of the minor or the infant, even though he was to be trained as a dancer. So when the beneficial contract of service, evaluating it in a whole, does not inure to the benefit of the infant, it will be void. So you can enter into a contract as an infant to be trained out for education. All those contracts is a contract of service. However, the caveat that the contract, when viewed as a whole, should benefit the infant. Now let's deal with contract of necessaries. So contract for necessaries. Now, necessaries are defined as goods suitable to the minor's condition in life and to his actual requirement at the time of the delivery, at the time of the sale, and at the time of the delivery. So this is what you are saying. If you enter into a contract with a minor, the goods in question should be suitable to his living condition. And at the time the person is making the requirement, it should meet the person's living condition. And at the time of delivery, it should also meet the actual requirements of the infant. It means that when at the time of the contract, it meets the standard of living of the infant, but at the time of delivery, it does not meet his actual requirement, then that goods cannot be considered as contract for necessary. You should also know that whether an article is capable of being necessary depends on the social standing or professional and duties of the minor. What may be necessary to you will not be necessary item to another person based on their condition of life. So things like food, clothing, shelter, means of export are all examples of contract for necessaries. You will see the popular case of Chappell v. Cooper. The court held that, look, an infant who bought a coffin for the burial of his husband was a contract of necessary, and she was responsible for the cost. Now remember, when you enter into a contract of necessary with an infant, the infant will pay a reasonable price, not the contractual price. So the key word here is reasonable price, but not the contractual price. Also remember that the case of Nash versus Eman states that you enter into a contract with an infant at your own risk. The case of Nash versus Eman, the adults enter into a contract with the infant to supply 11 fancy clothes. The infant failed to pay, and the adult brought an action against the infant. The father of the infant argued that, look, I have already provided some of these items, so you want to take undue advantage. The court came to the conclusion that that contract was not a contract for necessary, and that you enter into a contract with an infant at your own risk. While the goods are for necessaries, the infant will pay a reasonable price, but not the contractual price. Let's move to a minor. So a minor is always given the benefit of being a minor. So it is good to be a minor, right? Even if a minor falsely represents himself as a major or adult and takes a loan or enters into a contract, he can plead minority. This is not to say that they should take the undue advantage over this. Insolvency. A minor cannot be declared insolvent as he cannot avail debt. Insolvency means that you have been declared that you cannot pay your debt when it's for due. In the case of a joint contract between an individual and a minor, executed by a guardian on behalf of the minor, the liability falls on the adult. It doesn't fall on the minor. Now let's look at mental disordered persons. For the purpose of entering into a contract, a person is said to be sound if the person is capable of understanding the contract and being able to assess the effects upon his interest. So you only a person that can enter into a contract if you are a sound person. Then you're saying that, look, you are capable of understanding what the contract you are entering, and also assess the effect, whether positive or negative, on your own interest. Now, when it comes to necessary items, those contracts, when entered by a mentally disordered person, those contracts will necessarily bind the person. So for contracts, for necessary, there's omission. Contract for necessary, it binds the mentally disordered person. In any other contract, we are saying that, look, the contract will bind, or the mentally disordered person is bound by the contract. However, if he can show that owing to his mental condition, he didn't understand the terms of the contract he was going to sign, and you also have to prove that indeed the other party knew of your condition, that's your incapacity to enter into a contract. So you have some people, if they want to enter into a contract with you and you are not agreeing to what their terms and conditions, they will look at a time when you are not in your proper state to enter into a contract. At that side, you can set aside that contract when you come to your normal senses. You also have the issue of intoxicated person. It also works like the mentally disordered person. Lord Ellenbogen, this law stated that intoxication has nothing. So let me take this one again. So all what this provision is saying, that a person in a state of complete intoxication has no agree mind. So if you are intoxicated, then there's nothing that in your right sense you can agree to. Now, if an intoxicated person sign a contract, that contract is voidable at his own option. That's when he comes to his senses, he can ratify the contract. You should also remember that courts cannot enforce contract between parties, including enemy aliens. So if you are enemy alien, it means that we are in war with your country. So if Ghana is having war with Nigeria, then we consider Nigerians to be enemy alien, and the courts in Ghana will not enforce any contract against a Ghanaian. Body corporates, we are saying that they have capacity to enter into any contract of their choice, provided that it is not tainted with illegality. Government has also the capacity to enter into a contract, subject to the fact that some governmental institutions, sometimes they have to subject those contracts for the approval of the Parliament. In this session, we have attempted to explain what is meant by capacity to contract. We also try to identify the individual who don't have the capacity, who don't have the contractual capacity to enter into a contract. So overall, we have attempted to explain capacity to contract. We also identify those who can enter into a contract and those who cannot enter into a contract.